What's up, fight fans? This is Kurt DeVille with Counterpunch Boxing News, and I got to counterpunch something today, man. I watched a video with Keith Thurman, and he stated that Terence Crawford is barely a champion. You know, and this was coming on from the 14th, so the 20th. Okay. And he also stated in this video that number one versus number two. So he looks at himself. He looks at himself as number one, and he looks at Errol Spence as number two. And of course, everybody wants to see number one versus number two. So that's kind of like the super fight or whatnot, and he said, well, I'm gonna have fight a rematch with Shawn Porter. So that's what he's gearing towards, but he's gonna get a tune-up fight first. And he said it would be stupid for him to go in, fresh from having a long layoff and fight the number two welterweight, which I could see. I could see the argument with that, as far as him having a long layoff, because you want to get a nice tune-up in and get all the ring rust off from his injuries and other things, and other distractions that kept him away from the ring. However, it's like you fight Shawn Porter, which is a rematch. I guess he'll fight again for that unification bout. Okay, because they fought before. I could think that's a little redundant, but I mean, it was a tough fight because Shawn Porter did give him any and everything that he could handle. So I could see that happening. But as far as Errol Spence, calling Errol Spence number two, he said he done a little bit more than Errol Spence. I would disagree with that 100%. Errol Spence hasn't done a little bit less than him, okay? Because Keith Thurman has been in there with Danny Garcia and Shawn Porter. And those guys are revered as the top dudes at the welterweight division if there was no Spence. Spence would been around for maybe a couple years now. You know what I mean? And then even before then, he couldn't get fights. He's fought guys like Samuel Vargas, Chris Algieri. Kell Brook is his biggest fight, or his biggest name on his resume. I mean, I understand that Kell Brook beat Shawn Porter, but he has not been in there with Shawn Porter. And I do not believe in triangle theories because they're stupid. Because styles make fights, not triangle theories. Just because he beats Kell Brook and Kell Brook beats Shawn Porter doesn't mean that Spence is going to go in there and just shut out Shawn Porter. It doesn't mean that, because he doesn't even fight like Kell Brook. You know what I mean? Kell Brook's a counterpuncher. You know what I'm saying? He's not. He's a front-forward fighter. And if those guys fought, you don't know who would necessarily win. I won't say he would just blow him out. He would be favored to beat Shawn Porter. But he hasn't fought Shawn Porter. Neither has Danny Garcia. And Keith Thurman has fought them both. And so for Keith to say that Spence is number two, I think that's a tactic of building a wedge or driving a wedge between him and Crawford. Because as long as he could say, oh, Crawford is barely a champion, that can put or ease the media's mind for not wanting to get in the ring with him. Because I think Terence Crawford beats them all, honestly. You know what I mean? Errol Spence might give him problems, but then again, he might not. Because that would be a fight that you would anticipate, but you would think would be a good fight, and it turns out he just ends up getting outboxed for 12 rounds. But I think Keith Thurman, because he did the same thing to Spence. A lot of people did. You get a belt, then we'll fight you. He got a belt, then no one still wants to fight him. You know what I mean? So it's a never-ending story with Spence. Spence could make his own claim. He could, like I said, he could either move up or he could fight Terence Crawford or sit down with Bob Arum. Bob Arum said, we can make this fight in 3 hours. So here, if I'm Errol Spence and I hear stuff like that, why won't I jump on that? Bob Arum said that, 2 or 3 days ago? You know what I'm saying? He said that a while ago now, So hearing stuff like that, you can't call no one a bluff when you're not trying to make a fight happen. You know what I'm saying? That's why I don't understand about these fighters. They say fighters are ducking them. They say all the promotional companies don't want this fight to happen for their fighter. But then the promotional company says, well, hey, we can make this fight very quickly. We need to do is sit down with his people, you know, and we can work together and get this fight if you really want to fight. You know what I mean? And then that's my conclusion. I don't really feel that Errol Spence really wants to fight Terence Crawford. I don't think that. That drunken rant was just, all he said was excuses. He said that he's the A-side. He said that he's going to have to come over here because he's not fighting on ESPN. What does that sound like? It sounds like you're refusing to work with another network because you're not with that network. That's all I'm hearing. He's on the wrong side of the street. Who started that? Errol Spence. Some people on the wrong side of the street. You know what I mean? He said that as an excuse because the more and more people call out that fight, the public demands that fight. You know, he has man down promotions or man down, productions or promotions or what? Yeah, promotions. And that's his promotional company. Okay, that's your promotional company. You are not signed with anyone. You just fight on a particular network. You know what I mean? So I don't understand what's the problem, you know? But then you have Keith Thurman, which he's magically ducking people himself, you know, saying, oh, Terence Crawford is barely a champion. You know, that's things you say about fighters that you don't want to fight. No, he's barely a champion. I don't see him. He beat Jeff Horn. Nobody else has fought Jeff Horn. You know what I mean? The only person that's fought Jeff Horn is Terence Crawford. Okay? And Jeff Horn did give Manny Pacquiao all he could handle. I don't think that was a very good version of Manny Pacquiao, but Manny Pacquiao, I think he still beat him. But Jeff Horn, it wasn't just a straight robbery, though, because Jeff Horn did fight his heart out. Who's to say he won't do that with any other fighter? And look who else he fought. He fought the number one fighter in the world, Terence Crawford. People, you know, I don't see where Keith Thurman has the credibility for him not even fighting for 2 years. He ain't even been on the scene. He's been doing everything but fighting. He's been running his mouth. You know what I mean? He's good at doing that. But at the same token, it's like, what have you done lately? Besides beat Danny Garcia. Okay, Shawn Porter's beat Danny. And now you're going to go back in there with Shawn Porter. Instead of go after the belt that you never had, which is the IBF, which was once owned by Kell Brook, which was once owned by Shawn Porter. You know what I mean? But you're going to fight Porter again, you know, for the same belt that you just left. It makes no sense. You know, it just seems like, okay, that's a better bet to go in there with Shawn Porter. Not saying that would be an easier fight, but he knows the blueprint. He's been in there with Shawn Porter. He knows what Shawn Porter brings to the table. So, yeah, of course, that would be an easier fight for him. But for him not going in there with number two, well, I'm not going to go in there, you know, my first two fights. I'm like, well, how many fights do you need before you're a champion? He was the once unified champion of the welterweight division, the WBA and the WBC. So how long do you have to take to get yourself together to fight the elite fighters? You know what I mean? Meanwhile, you got poor Spence sitting around there like a long-lost puppy. You know, I'm getting drunk with his boys, Tank Davis and Adrian Broner. He can't even find a fight. Broner's good. Tank, Spence, they are not. They are looking for fights. You know, and I think Tank Davis is actually trying, you know, considering going to Eddie Hearn, but that's another story. I'll cover that later. So, you know, but I know the tactic. I see it. You know, Spence, he only wants to fight Keith Thurman. You know what I mean? I don't think he really wants to fight Crawford. And Keith Thurman doesn't want to fight Spence right away. He wants to wait until early 2020 to have that fight if that fight happens. And hopefully someone beats Spence. You know what I mean? So he's waiting to see who everyone wins or loses, and then fights them. That's what he's doing. That's what Keith does. You know what I mean? So... And I think Keith's really comfortable with the, you know, successes in his career. I think he's good. I don't think that he really wants to test himself anymore. I don't think that. You know what I mean? Keith, I feel Keith should retire and become a commentator for some network. You know what I mean? You know, they're getting scarce, so it's not too many, you know. Maybe he could commentate for Showtime, him and Paula Malignaggi. You know what I mean? Because they're both charismatic. They can speak well. You know, they know the fight game. I think he should do that because him waiting a whole year to fight Errol Spence, that's unacceptable to fight fans. He shouldn't have to wait that long being, a world-class fighter and a champion on top of that and undefeated. Not everybody can be Mayweather. Mayweather gave people unexpected expectations. Okay? That doesn't happen with everyone. And it just happened with Floyd because he was surrounded by some smart people and smart businessmen. So that's my take on it, man. I don't think that the welterweight division is looking too well. Maybe the zone will get down there and steal some more fighters, convince them to go to the zone. And then at that point, they would have to be forced to fight the best because they probably won't get paid what they think they're going to get paid if they don't. You know what I mean? It's going to cost people because Eddie Hearn is one of them type of dudes where he's setting dates for these fighters. So if he gets a fighter, he gives a fighter a lump sum of money and they set dates for those particular fighters. If they're fighting 3 times a year or 4 times a year, that's what he's doing. And for each fight, he has increments of payments on how much he'll get paid. So let's say Tank Davis goes to Eddie Hearn. I wasn't going to talk about this, but he might pay him $1.5 million a fight. We don't know how much Tank Davis is getting made, or maybe $2 million a fight. But he's fighting. You know what I mean? He's getting that work. But anyway, you guys tell me what you think about Keith Thurman's responses, remarks. Please subscribe. And you guys been counterpunched. Peace.